I now have the pleasure and honor of introducing a very accomplished and celebrated individual who will be receiving an honorary doctorate from BCIT this morning. We're also privileged to have him as our keynote speaker. The Honorary Doctorate of Technology is awarded to individuals who are widely recognized for outstanding and sustained achievements in their areas of endeavor and expertise. Dominic Barton most definitely fits that bill. Dominic Barton is the Global Managing Director of McKinsey & Company. Based in London, Dominic leads the firm's focus on the future of capitalism and the role business leadership can play in creating long-term social and economic value. Before becoming Global Managing Director, Dominic served as McKinsey's chairman in Asia from 2004 to 2009. He also headed McKinsey's office in Korea from 2000 to 2004. A prolific writer, Dominic has authored more than 80 articles and 2 books, Dangerous Markets, Managing and Financial Crises with Roberto Newell and Greg Wilson, and China Vignettes, an inside look at China. Dominic is an active participant in the World Economic Forum, the Asia Business Council, and the China Development Forum, just to name a few. He's also the chair of the Canadian Minister of Finance's Advisory Council on Economic Growth, the chair of the Seoul International Business Advisory Council, a board member of the Asia Pacific Foundation of Canada, and chair of the U.S. President's Advisory Council on Doing Business in Africa. Dominic's a busy fellow, and we're very lucky to have him for a day here. Dominic has received multiple awards for his business leadership and contributions to the communities in which he's lived and worked. For example, in 2013, Dominic received the Order of Civil Merit from the former President Lee of South Korea. And in 2014, he was awarded the Singaporean Public Service Star. He's a Rhodes Trustee and an honorary fellow at Brasenose College, Oxford. Dominic is also an adjunct professor at Tsinghua University, Beijing. Dominic's career and accomplishments are inspirational for both new grads and indeed for everyone here today. Dominic Barton embodies BCIT's emphasis on creativity and innovation. It's with great pleasure and honor that I bestow the Honorary Doctorate of Technology from the British Columbia Institute of Technology on Dominic Barton.
Thank you, Adam. Adam and Kathy will now invest Dominic with the hood and present him with the degree certificate. This signifies the conferring of the degree of Honorary Doctor of Technology to Dominic Barton. Thank you, Kathy and Adam. You can take your seats. I now invite Dominic Barton to deliver his address.
Well, thank you very, very much, and thank you, Adam, for the very kind introduction. But I want to start, first of all, by saying a huge congratulations to all of the graduates. It's a marvelous achievement. I remember vividly when I did my first undergraduate, and it was an amazing, amazing time. I don't remember anything that the keynote speaker said, or really much else. But I remember being with good friends and friends for life. And I also want to congratulate the parents and family who've been key in supporting them through it. It's an amazing achievement. I really hope you feel proud of what they've done. So congratulations to you. And a big thank you to the faculty. And I'm going to come on to that in a second because, in fact, what I want to try and do, because I'm a rambler and I want to keep this to 7 minutes, is talk about 3 things. One, why I'm so proud to be affiliated with BCIT and why I think you should be very, very proud of coming from this institution. 2 is to talk a little bit about the world and how it's changing. And I say that because you're all leaders. You're all going to be leading, I think, in some of the most exciting times in history. And so it's good to understand where that is, and you have every right to lead than anyone else on the planet. So I hope I can just talk a little bit about that. And then third, some practical advice, which is always dangerous coming from a consultant, but I'm going to try and give a few bits of practical advice. So first on, why I am so proud of BCIT. I've actually first learned about BCIT when I was in Singapore. This is about 7 years ago. And we were doing work in Asia on how to get educational institutes to prepare their students better for education, because most higher level educational institutes inadequately prepare people for jobs. They educate, but not necessarily for employment. And so we were looking around the world at various different institutions, and the head of our practice, a woman from Bahrain, basically said, you should go to Singapore, look at how the Singaporeans get the government, the Ministry of Finance, the Ministry of Education, the vocational schools, universities. They sit together and they plan what sort of jobs are going to be needed and therefore the skills, and do it very, very well. And I was quite impressed, but I said, Singapore is a city. It's a great city, but it's not a country. And then Mona said to me, she said, she doesn't know I'm Canadian. She said, there's a place that you probably haven't heard of, which I think is the #1 educational institute, higher order educational institute in the world in terms of training and educating people for life and for jobs. And it's a place called BCIT. She said it very slowly, just so I could listen. I said, BC, I got that. I guess she goes, that means the British Columbia Institute of Technology. That's in British Columbia. And I went, thank you very much, Mona. I appreciate that. That's and if you don't know, I actually grew up in Chilliwack. So I kind of have an affiliation for knowing where this is. But the passion with which she said it, so I began to explore more about this institution. And the more I discovered, the more excited I got. And that's actually how we got to know each other, because what I would often say, because I think education is going to be the most critical driver for enabling leaders and for the world to go through the next 15 to 20 years, which are going to be very dynamic. And we need to have more best practice examples around the world. And what I would say is, if I get fired from McKinsey, what I'm going to do is try and buy BCIT, and I'm going to globalize it, or at least take it across Asia and Western Europe. And that's sort of how we got to know each other. And the thing, I didn't actually try and buy it. I don't think I could afford to do it. But I just say that because I think you should be incredibly proud of the institution that you come from. It is world class, and the results show you deliver more jobs for students than any other institution that's out there. It is an institution that's taught by people who are also practitioners, people who understand and have experience in what's actually happening out there. That's actually quite unusual in many institutions that I've been involved in. And the third is it's flexible. It's a flexible way, and that's what we're going to have as we go ahead. So the first point is, I hope you feel very, very proud. I'm very proud to have a tangential now link to you and the institution. The second thing I just wanted to say is, as leaders, and I say this, and some of my colleagues have heard me say this all the time, they get bored of me saying it, but I'm jealous of you. And I'm jealous of you because you are going to be leading in, again, what I think is one of the most exciting times in history. And by that I mean a 300-year time frame. I'm not talking about the last 50 years. And the reason I say that is because there are so many fundamental forces at work that are going on that are going to change the world in very significant ways. The first is that we've got this shift in a power base from the west to the east. You need to understand how Asia works and how Africa is going to work if you want to be relevant in the future. That's where the power shift is going, and it is moving at 1,000 times faster than we saw in the Industrial Revolution. I'm not going to go into all of the boring detail behind it, but it is a massive force like we've never seen before in terms of an economic power shift, where the big companies are going to be, where the small companies are going to be, where we need to trade, where we need to build professional relationships. But the second force might even be more powerful than that, and that's technology. You know, we're at chapter 1 of a 100-chapter book. The power of computers, as you know. A computer today can basically mimic an insect, which may not sound that exciting or that sophisticated. It actually is. We're moving to the level of a mouse in about 3 years from now, and then a human brain probably by 2023, 2024, and then some people are arguing with Singularity that we're going to move to all human brains by 2045. Whether you believe that or not doesn't matter. It's just there is a relentless change in computing power that you are experiencing, and we're at the very early stages. And that's why even institutions like the Catholic Church and the Pope have an advisory group on artificial intelligence. Because as the Pope says, there's actually not very much written about artificial intelligence 2,000 years ago. And we probably need to have a perspective of how that's going to work, the ethics of it, and how it moves. So every institution is going to be disrupted by that computing power. The data, we're collecting more data every 2 days as humans than we had in our entire previous 2,000 years. So massive amounts of data. 95% of it's useless, but 5% of it is actually useful. And those organizations that can manage and leverage that data are going to be doing very well. And then we are in a much more connected world. 3.2 billion people are connected. 80% of the human race will have a smartphone in the next 5 years. That combination of change is going to lead to very big disruption. It's going to be, I'm an optimist, I think it'll be positive, but there's going to be a lot of disruption, a lot of job changes that you go in, and the need to continue to educate yourself and to keep abreast of what's going on is going to be critical. So those are two forces. There are many others. We're becoming an aging world. We're going to have more people in your time of leadership. We will have more people over the age of 65 than less than 14 years old. And as I get older, please take care of us as you go on. Think of us. But you're going to have a big burden with a bunch of old buggers that you're going to have to deal with. And they cost a lot of money to keep them going. But it's also, I think, going to require changes in how we work, how we do healthcare, how we shift things. That's just one of the other forces. So you're leading in a time of incredible disruption. The average lifetime of a company, a big company, if you were on the Standard & Poor's 500 in 1935, which wasn't a great time, was about 90 years. Today, if you're on that list, it's 15 years, so that the churn rate is moving up, so the speed of the world is going up. So I just want to say that as background, that you know what you're heading into, and that's going to require leadership like we haven't seen before. And everyone can be a leader. And one of the things I want to say as I get into the more practical side is, I remember growing up, actually it was in Sardis, not Chilliwack. We were a suburb of Chilliwack. We were very proud of our little community. And I remember going to Vancouver was a big deal. As a family, we'd go once a year. That was a big trip to come into Vancouver. It was a big deal. And I remember being very nervous about going to university. I come from a small high school where most people don't do post-secondary education. What will it be like? Will I be able to, interact with them? Is it a different group? And you find out, yeah, it's actually, you can. This is a place where you can be part of it. And then when I went from there to Oxford, I thought, okay, this is a place where I wonder what people are like. There'll be people from other different schools around the world. I'd been taught by one of my high school teachers in Sardis that used to always tell me, he was British, he'd always say, what I'm teaching you guys is what we taught people 5 years younger than you. It was kind of this kind of we reduced the curriculum for you. I had this kind of chip on my shoulder. And so I was very worried going into the UK of what it's like. And what I remember after my first year there, I called him and I said, I think you actually should come back for some retraining, because what we were doing was 5 years ahead of what these guys are doing and where it is. And so I think, again, the notion of you have a right, you have an obligation to lead, and especially coming from this institution, which is world-class, you have a right and an obligation to lead, to seize the day, and so forth, and drive it forward. And the only reason that one doesn't or does do it is around your ambition and leadership. And that's where I just want to get to the practical advice quickly, and then I'll shut up here. And I start it by, there's many jokes made about consultants, all of which I hate, but I have to say there's one I want to pass on, which is, have you heard the story about the goat herder in Greece? And a guy in a car pulls up, a black car, the suit pulls out, and the goat herder's there, and the guy says to the goat herder, if I can guess how many sheep you have in your herd with the goats and everything else, can I have one of your animals? And the guy goes, sure. So he gets his computer out, starts clicking away, and says, you have 214 sheep. To which point the goat herder goes, you're right. So then the person in the suit says, well, I'd like that to take one of your goats. So he takes the goats. And then the goat herder says, do you mind if I ask you a question? If I guess your profession, can I have my animal back? And the guy looks at him and says, what? He goes, you're a management consultant. And he said, why do you say that? He goes, because you come here uninvited to tell me something that I already know. And by the way, could I have my dog back? So that with that as a backdrop, I just want to give you a couple of pieces of practical advice. And I can see in the audience, many of you already, I think, meet the first criteria. But one I would say is be global. And what I mean by that is spend time before the age of 30 in another country. I don't care what country it is. Travel and live in another country for a year. I learned that one of the biggest inflection points for me was when I was in McKinsey and I moved to Australia for a year. We were doing work with the government. We happened to be working with Paul Keating, who happened to be the treasurer in Australia, looking at the tax system. And we were sitting at a dinner. The dinner often had nothing to do with the work, and there was a lot of wine that was being drunk. And what he said on the second dinner, I remember he looked at me and he said, if you have half a brain, and I'm not sure you do, you would be well wise to go and move to Asia. This was in 1987. And I said, well, Asia, what? And he goes, because that's where the future is going to be. And you better start understanding and spending time and seeing what's actually happening in that part of the world. It doesn't matter where you go in there, go. So this notion of get out for a while and come back, it's going to be one of the biggest leadership learning experiences that you will have over time. The second is find mentors. Every year that you're working, add 3 mentors to your list. And mentors are people that you don't sit with every Friday afternoon for 2 hours and talk about life. They're people that you can call for 7 minutes at times when you have a tricky question or a choice you want to make, but you build a relationship with them. I today have about 40 mentors. Many of them are people that have long since retired from their work. Many of them are clients. Many of them are actually junior people in McKinsey. But the important thing is to have a group of mentors that can help you and guide you. It's like having your own, many people say it, board of directors as you look through it. The third is get involved in a community event. I don't care what it is. If I could redo my time at McKinsey, I would spend time in the community. I don't care if it's leading the local Girl Guides group or the Boy Scouts or whatever it is. Get involved in the community because you will learn a lot. In my 4th year in McKinsey in Toronto, I was asked to work at the Wellesley Hospital, which is a very small hospital just beside our office. And I remember I went to the office manager and I said, what did I do wrong? Like, why are you doing that? I'm busy. I've got lots of things to do. And he said, you got to go there. It's an important institution and they need some help. And then when I went there, I was so arrogant, I thought I was going to join the board, but I was actually the coffee boy. I would run around, get the coffee, photocopy the papers, get everything ready. But I learned so much in that by seeing how a board worked. I saw the pressures that the chairman of a board had, that the president had, the fundraising, the weird issues that would happen in an institution. And some of the professional network I gained from that has lasted me to this day, and it was never intended that way. So get involved in the local community. A fourth is make a not-to-do list. So this is write down what you're not going to do, because what you're going to find is as you go through life and you're driving things along, you're just going to keep adding things to the table. You're going to add more and more and more. And this is something I learned actually from Jack Dorsey. We were in St. Petersburg 2 weeks ago, and he talked about the single most important factor for him was having this not-to-do list, which allowed him more time to do what he wanted to do. For him, he doesn't watch television, right? He just doesn't watch it, and he likes it, but he doesn't watch it. It's a way to sort of just free up time. And the final comment I would just make is stay interesting. And this is the last story I'll say, and then I'll truly shut up here. And I remember I was in Singapore. I was a new partner in McKinsey, and we were serving the Singaporean government on a financial strategy. It was to help Singapore become a financial center. And I was very excited about the work we're doing. And one of my mentors, a fellow from California, was coming for a visit. His name was Ted Hall. And Ted showed up in the Shangri-La Hotel at 7:30 in the morning. We were there for the meeting, and Ted's a big guy. He's about 350 pounds. And he was wearing a red Hawaiian T-shirt. And he came in, and I said, Ted, it's great you've got up early in the morning for a walk, but the meeting's happening a while, so I think you should probably go change, put a white shirt on, and we'll just go see the client. And Ted looks at me and he goes, this is what I'm wearing to the client. And I said, Ted, I know you're tired, it's jet lagged. In Singapore, they don't really like that kind of, it's better to just have just a plain colored shirt, that's all you have to do. He said, Dom, I'm gonna give you a choice, shirt or no shirt, you pick. I said, I think I'll go for the shirt. And then I said, okay, well, we might as well get going. And I'm just going, wonder if we should cancel the meeting. And we get into the taxi to go to the meeting. And the meeting is actually with B.G. Lee, who's now the Prime Minister, and Tharman, who's now the Minister of Finance. And we're driving there in these, everyone's been in Singapore, they're very small little taxis. And with my friend Ted, who's very large, I was sort of squished into the corner. And I said to Ted, where's the document? Do you have the document we're going to use? And he said, what document? I said, the agenda, 8 o'clock to 8:05, introductions, 8:05 to 8:20, blah, blah. He says, I don't have a document. I said, Ted, people are pretty organized here, they like to have it. And then he looked at me and said, Dom, if I had a document, I'd rip it up and I'd throw it out the window. I said, Ted, you're seriously jet lagged, and I don't think we should go into this meeting. And he goes, no, I'm going to tell you something. We're getting closer and closer to the client side. And he looked at me and he said, I want to give you some feedback. He goes, and you are the most boring person I have met in my entire life. You are so boring. He goes, I can barely keep awake. I don't even know, why doesn't anyone want to spend time with you? You are so boring. And I'm going, Ted, how about we do the feedback after the meeting, because I'm trying to get up here. And he was ragging on me all the way up and says, you're boring. He goes, what's your hobbies? Do you have any hobbies? And I said, well, I had a lot. I like to read. He goes, BS. He goes, you have no hobbies. You're boring. You eat, sleep, you work. That's boring. No one wants to be with boring people. You need to be, your hobbies are important. Your extracurricular activities are just as important as what you do, and you've let them winnow away. Shame on you. Like I was going, Jesus, and I was wondering about why I had him as a mentor, actually. And then, so we go into the meeting, we're there, and sitting at the table, there's two sort of sheets of paper, and I saw B.G. Lee and Tharman walk by. They looked in. Obviously, it was not the meeting, because no one would be wearing a shirt like that. They walked by, they came back, and then they realized it was the meeting. First question, where's the agenda? And I'm just smiling away. And Ted says there is no agenda, because we're dealing with one of the most boring humans on the planet. And then we proceeded actually to have a wonderful meeting. But I say that because with all of the exciting things that you're going to see as you go ahead, and that you're so well prepared for, and that you need to spend the time to keep being prepared for, don't lose the personal interesting side of things, because that's, I think, at the end of the day, what makes you a real human and a leader in all that you do. So I want to say again, congratulations on an amazing accomplishment. If I could invest in you as individuals, not the institution, I would, because I know that you're going to do some amazing things for the planet. So thank you, and thank you again for this honor. Appreciate it.